Hello, everyone. I am very excited today because today is a very special day because we're going to be talking about you and your well being. And here with me is a very special person. Um, I met her through my program at USC, and she's one of the speakers at that time, and I was just blown away. Sally Duplantier. She is a renowned gerontologist and founder of Zing. Her mission is to help older adults live their best lives longer through better nutrition, more movement, better sleep, less stress, and more social engagement. Sally is also the host of Wellness Wednesdays, a free service to the community which provide evidence-based programs related to healthy aging. Sally was recently named one of the top 10 entrepreneurs breaking barriers and making a difference by LA Weekly. She's currently doing research related to the health and well-being of family caregivers of Alzheimer's patients. So let's all welcome Sally.
It's just a delight to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
It's an honor, Sally. It's really an honor. Sally, we're here today about our caregivers, not just Care Indeed's caregiver, but caregivers all over the world in terms of their well-being and health. Do you mind providing us your definition of well-being, caregivers' well-being?
Sure, absolutely. I recently did some research about this, and it's interesting because I was talking to family caregivers of Alzheimer's patients. And I would say that well-being encompasses a few different aspects. So there's the physical aspect, but equally important is the emotional well-being. And then in talking with caregivers, it's more than that. It's also social and spiritual. So it's really a holistic look at the person and how I think another aspect of well-being is kind of like how in control they feel of their own health. And what we find with caregivers is quite frequently, because they are doing so much to help others, that their own ability to care for themselves is backburnered.
Correct. And Sally, question for you in terms of, again, you're very respected in the community, and you seem to have it all together. The real question here is, have you experienced burnout? And if yes, how did you handle that though? Because this is really one of the biggest problems in our industry, caregiver burnout.
Yeah.
What's your experience like, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah. So I have to say that I had not personally been a caregiver, but I had deeply studied caregivers, and my research that I'm doing now at the University of Indiana, I've been working with some of these caregivers and talking with them for over 2 years. And so burnout can be experienced in many different ways. One way I described it was this mantle of responsibility that could not be shed. So it's that feeling that, and we oftentimes we call it the subjective burden of care. It's not just the physical aspects to the caregiving that are involved. It might be lifting, it might be, moving someone, bathing, etc. But it's the subjective feeling, the impact that it has on us and how it affects us. And there's something called almost like caregiver fatigue. There's a certain kind of fatigue that happens, compassion fatigue, when a person who's caring for someone who's ill, often their illness becomes their problem. In addition to all the other issues that the caregiver might have for their own health and well-being, they start to personalize or internalize that the other person's problems.
Correct. And you know what, Sally, I've actually experienced that. That's one of the things that when I was a caregiver, That's something that I have experienced myself. Like sometimes I'm unable to really separate my own experience, my own feeling, because I when someone's suffering, I feel like I'm suffering myself. And I think I'm still a work in progress. I'm still a recovering empath. And the question that I have with you is, because most empaths, just like me, are in the caregiving industry, what are the healthy ways for empaths, for caregivers who's unable to really separate themselves to the client's suffering or situation? What's a healthy way of handling those things?
Yeah, you raised such a good question. So I love that you're a recovering empath. So I think the starting point is actually recognizing it. You know, the fact is that you understand that you more closely identify, or maybe too closely identify with that person.
Yes.
Then I tend to look at how imbalanced is your life. Now, there's challenges to being a caregiver because it probably is skewed. When I think about that kind of the caregivers that work for you, they have family lives, they may have children, they may have long commutes, they may need to grocery shop, they may need to cook. There's many, many other responsibilities. But I would say if you start to identify almost too closely with the person you're caring for, try your best to take a step back and look at the other things that are going on in your life. And even, we talk about support groups, but even
Yes.
the support of one other person. There's so much power in community if
Got
one
it.
other person just gets it and understands what you're going through. And I think oftentimes caregivers, whether it's family caregivers that I've studied or the professional caregivers who work for you, they don't feel that they have an option to talk. They may
True.
even be afraid of losing their job if they complain. So I
Correct.
think one of the things that organizations like yours need to do is create a safe space to listen deeply.
Got it. And it's so funny, Sally, that you're mentioning this, because it was out of nowhere 2 weeks ago. I said it's going to be the end of the year 2023, and I'm sure 2023 has been one of the most challenging years for us, for Care Indeed. And I thought about this donuts with V, and something that we started last Saturday. And the goal here is really to have that moment of me listening to our caregivers, to where we are in their journey. Are we doing good? Do we need improvement, and what are those? And I think you mentioned a great point about safe space. That's something that we are trying to create, but we're not there yet. But I think with your expert advice, it's just really very reassuring that we are somewhat on the right path.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I'd love to talk about a little bigger challenge in this industry, because it affects what you can do for caregivers. Is that we have a challenge that we have a vastly and quickly aging population. So I think we have 1.4 billion people right now who are 60 or older, and that's going to double by 2050. And at the same time, that group is increasing, older adults. The number of qualified caregivers is decreasing.
Absolutely.
And then on top of it, you have these older adults in the population that's increasing, is that they have more chronic disease. At least 90% of people 60 and older have at least one chronic disease, 80% have two or more. And they're going to need care. And they're not, and unfortunately, with the healthcare system like it is, it doesn't really pay for it. So you have older adults who have more chronic disease, living on fixed income, and insurance doesn't cover the care that they need, especially in their own homes where people want to live. So I personally feel that we have some systems issues involved here where we don't value caregivers enough, and we should. It's like teachers. We don't really value teachers that much. We don't.
Correct. Correct.
And it's a challenge because your caregivers are caring for people who are don't necessarily have a lot of money, and
Absolutely.
it's slow, which is a challenge.
A biggest challenge. I mean, I've seen so many, I've done a lot of assessments where, it's visible the client needs help, but they cannot afford, and on the other side, we have caregivers. In order to retain them, we have to pay them, more, or fair, right? So those are the challenge that home care agencies, not just Care Indeed, face on a daily basis. And that's the reason that you are absolutely right in terms of shortage of qualified caregivers. There's a lot of applicants, there's a lot of people who wants to be part of the caregiving world, but those qualified, competent, and passionate is really the need of the community.
And passionate is so key. I'll add that the people that I've researched the most, the family caregivers of Alzheimer's patients, are the people who would reach out to your organization to hire someone for respite care. And they all want somebody who cares about their loved one. That is so important to them. But I want to flip that around and say, yes, the people who hire caregivers need to care about the caregiver, because it's often a thankless task. It can be emotionally draining. We've talked about that. It's physically difficult. It's physically challenging. And then, you're caring for people who aren't at their best. Like many dementia patients, it's not memory loss, but it's behavior issues. It's acting out. It's, there's all sorts of kind of emotional upheaval that go with Alzheimer's patients, or people who aren't well, people who need care, who are losing their independence. So, part of kind of my advice here is that I would tell everyone who's hiring a caregiver, oh my gosh, like, walk a mile in their shoes. Think about what it might be like to be that person and commute an hour and a half just to come to your home. But then I also think, Vanessa, for you and other owners of agencies, like, you need to care deeply about these people, because sometimes the people they serve aren't in a position to do it.
Correct. And thank you for that reminder, Sally. That's again, a wish, a dream of mine, to be able to really make an impact in the caregivers' lives too, because I was a caregiver myself when I first moved here from the Philippines. And thank you for bringing that point about, like, really recognizing caregivers, because it is truly a thankless job, right? And there's a lot of, they give, and that's the reason why they're prone to burnout, because they're naturally giver. And sometimes be giving, you're not aware that you're already empty, and and that's really a big problem. That's why they're high risk of burnout.
And what's interesting, V, is that it's like a thankless task, and it's rewarding. So it's both. And there's this kind of paradox about caregiving. This one of the papers that I wrote, I talked about it, because it can be like the most challenging thing, and we can feel emotions for the person that we care for. It could be anger, it could be resentment, it could be guilt. I mean, it could be a lot of things. But then, oh my gosh, seeing like somebody with Alzheimer's smile or remember or, recognize something or have a good moment, have a good day, it can, both can be true. It can be the hardest thing and the most irritating thing you've done, and it can be so rewarding.
Absolutely.
The person to do it.
True. A Sally question here. What's an ideal caregiver for you? From people that you have seen who've hired the caregiver. What's an ideal caregiver?
So I'm going to answer that through the lens of my family caregivers who hire them. I'm going to start with simple basics, like they need to be on time. I know that sounds so silly. They need to show up. That seems like such a low common denominator. But there are many people who I've interviewed where, like, nobody came, nobody showed up. I think the next, obviously they need to be competent in the job that they're assigned to do. So, again, a number of patients need to be lifted, or they need to be moved, or they need limbs to be exercised. So there's a physical aspect, and then there's, like a responsibility if that caregiver needs to give medicine, that they're doing it competently. But that's kind of like, oh gosh, in poker we say jacks to open. Like that. That seems like that's like every
standard.
caregiver should do that.
Got
So
it.
what I would add on top of that, what I have heard, is someone who cares, somebody who genuinely cares. They're not just putting in time. And like caring can happen in different ways. It could be fluffing a pillow. It could be, when the patient gets up to use the restroom, fluffing a pillow, making the bed look nice. If it's a meal prep, making that meal look good. But it's a genuine interest. And I think what it's not is just, sitting on your phone, which sometimes, quite honestly, could be a lot more interesting. I think a lot of this, it starts here. It starts with attitude and caring and kindness.
You're special, Sally. You're truly special. Okay, so now we're about to end our short discussion. Question for you. I want to ask you as an expert, what will be that reason or should be the reason for a home care agency like me to continue this business?
Wow. Okay, that's a good question. I would say, quite honestly, we need more agencies like yours. You and I met obviously before this interview, and something I really noticed is the care and compassion. Like when I'm talking about kindness and I'm talking about caregivers doing it, it starts at the top. And we need more agencies that are run by people who care. And yes, you need to be profitable. You need to be profitable to stay in business. But there needs to be a compassion for the patients, for the caregivers. And then you and I have talked a little bit about some of these other aspects. It's listening deeply to the needs of the caregivers and understanding what can and can't be done and communicating that clearly. Because way before I was a gerontologist, I had my own business. Totally different area, business process change and technical training. I had probably 45 full-time people. I had maybe 100 contractors. I couldn't keep everyone happy. I couldn't keep the contractors and the employees and the clients all happy. But I could listen, and I could think about what could I do, what couldn't I do, what was the time frame, and then I could have honest discussions about it. But I think that comes from a place of respect, genuine respect. And I think we need more agencies that have genuine respect for both the people they serve and the caregivers they employ.
Thank you, Sally. Really, thank you, Sally, for this. I'll make sure to take it to the deepest part of my heart and try to have that as my guiding light, or hopefully a lot of home care agency as a guiding light for us to continue, because it's not, there's so much need. So yes. I really appreciate that. And the last thing is, do you mind giving or sending a message to all the caregivers who are working so hard providing the best care for their clients and even family caregivers?
Wow, I would love to share that message. What I want to say is, you are invaluable and you are appreciated and you're making a difference in the lives of others.